Jared, let's start with where we are on the recovery, and it's very good news. While there are some Americans that are absolutely struggling and need our support, there's also very good news. This virus is on the run. Jobs are coming back. We hear more and more about workers who are not wanting to go back to work because government assistance pays them more than their low wages. Plus, we had a great GDP number up 6%, household income up 21%, record savings for American families. All of that sounds very good. And at the same time, we're now asking the American people to spend $4 trillion to get us out of this hole, with some saying we're not in a hole. We're getting back to a good place.
Well, we're still very much climbing out of a hole, but you're right. We're climbing with some alacrity. But I think it's very important to recognize how deep that hole still is. Over 8.4 million jobs down from where we were pre-crisis. That is a huge problem for working Americans. And as you well know, it's not randomly distributed throughout the pay scale. It disproportionately affects those on the lower end of the K. And that's why we have to be mindful about not really conflating GDP growth with the prosperity and well-being of many middle-class and lower-income families. And also in the business of not conflating, let's not conflate 1 quarter GDP results, a number of months of jobs results, with an 8 to 10 year plan to invest in clean energy, in childcare, in elder care, in broadband, in clean water. These are structural, long-term deficits that will not be solved by a quarter or 2 or 3 or 4 of GDP growth. These have been ongoing disinvestments for over a decade that this president wants to solve.
To that very point, getting back to normal doesn't fix these issues. But this is an enormous amount of money. Where can you play ball? Where are your top priorities? Because some people look at this, and obviously when you say, you know, elder care, hugely important, but where do you get a number like $400 billion? Why not $800 billion? Why not $200 billion? Help me understand where these numbers come from, because it's not like we don't have programs at all right now.
It's a totally fair question, and I think the reason why there's some confusion there is that we never start in our policy process from a top-line number and try to hit it. We go from the bottom up, and we assess what will it take to close the very kinds of holes we talked about a minute ago. You know, we just talked about, you just mentioned community-based health care. There is a tremendous deficit in this country, and anybody with an aging parent, especially people who are not affluent, know that to be the case, where people put their personal finances through all kinds of difficult kind of conniptions in order to deal with an aging relative. This president wants to help resolve that conflict for people, whether it's elder care or child care, and it's going to cost resources of the type that we've put forth. I think what's important, what gets a little bit lost here, is that both the American Jobs Plan and the Families Plan are paid for with highly progressive tax increases that don't hit anyone under $400,000, or in the case of capital gains, under $1 million.
I want to stay on that, because the argument we often hear about big government is we don't get rid of programs that don't work. Right? If the government ran like a business and we said, these programs don't work, we need to fix them, we would get rid of one and start another one. Instead, the government just builds and builds and builds. So let's say we laid out all of these plans. Would we be wiping out other ones?
You know, I just don't really buy the premise. I think instead what we often do is we have necessary programs that don't work as well as they should. So we do have some child care help in this country, but it's completely insufficient. We have a child dependent care tax credit, but it's completely insufficient. A child tax credit that doesn't reach enough people. In the rescue plan and in the jobs plan and in the families plan, all of the measures I've just mentioned are either made permanent or are extended for numerous years. So what we're about is fixing programs that don't work as well as they should. And that, I think, is what good governance really means.
I am absolutely not arguing with what constitutes making a lot of money versus not, but we're already hearing from some Democrats in high-tax states who say what you think is rich isn't necessarily rich to everyone here. We need to address SALT and other issues before we ask our people in these states to pay more money, because those high-tax states are already dealing with people leaving to move to lower-tax states.
Well, first of all, I think we have to just make sure everybody, not just here in D.C., but throughout the nation, recognizes that President Biden has said anyone who wants to come forth with a good idea from the Congress, from the House, from the Senate, his door is open. He's already had meetings with folks to talk about their ideas. What's unacceptable is inaction. What's unacceptable is any tax increases below $400,000. And by the way, you talked about, wealthy people scattered throughout the country. The capital gains tax increase that the president has proposed hits 0.3% of the population. Now, I grant you that's going to be a little higher in some places than others, but that is a tiny share of the population.
I do have to ask you about $80 billion. That's interesting to me. $80 billion for IRS enforcement. We know we lose a ton of tax revenue every single year from people who are not paying their taxes, lying about their taxes, cheating on their taxes, often the richest people out there. Is this $80 billion going to solve that?
It's certainly going to help. I feel a little bit like all these policies are my children, and I don't want to favor one over the other.
But you're going to have to.
But this one, I'm going to have to, because this one is just so important. This is reversing decades of underfunding the IRS, which worked as a shadow tax cut for tax avoiders and evaders. These investments will help increase the reporting of underreported income and will raise hundreds of billions of dollars of taxes owed but not paid. Nothing in that part of the plan is a tax increase. It's simply collecting what's owed. It's closing a multi-hundred billion tax gap. And yes, I am confident this plan will get us a good chunk of the way there.
Are you confident this plan is going to get through at $4 trillion?
I am confident that this president is going to negotiate the best plan for America's middle-class families, generating good jobs, good union jobs for people who've long needed them.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.